There's a liquid that costs exactly $2 to make at home. It turns gray, cracked, ruined wood back to the day it left the factory. Not with paint that merely hides the damage under a plastic shell, and not with stain that fades in 6 months, leaving you right back where you started. It penetrates the grain itself and rebuilds the wood from the inside out. One coat on a rotting fence, and the neighbors think you replaced every single board. One pass on a weathered deck, and the contractor you almost called loses a $1,000 job. Furniture that looked ready for the county landfill suddenly looks like it belongs in a luxury showroom. No sanding required, no expensive power tools needed, no prior experience necessary. This exact formula has existed since before the Second World War. Master craftsmen and cabinet makers in the 1930s knew it by heart. Then, the modern wood restoration industry figured out something absolutely devastating to their bottom line. If everyday homeowners discovered this simple liquid, they would never call a professional contractor again. A $2 bottle that replaces a $900 service simply cannot be allowed to spread. So, they buried it. They did not bury this formula because it failed. They buried it because it worked entirely too well. This is the true story of the liquid the wood industry prayed you would never find. Welcome to the Forbidden Files. If these hidden stories matter to you, hit subscribe and the bell right now. This is exactly where we dig up what the massive corporate industries deliberately buried. You have been lied to for decades by chemical companies who want you dependent on their expensive, failing products. They want you trapped in an endless cycle of refinishing, spending thousands of dollars over the lifetime of your home. But today, that cycle breaks forever. I'm going to show you how to take your power back with just a few dollars. Pay very close attention because everything changes for you right now today. Now let me take you back to exactly where this forgotten formula was originally born. The year was 1860, and a brilliant British inventor named Frederick Walton noticed something incredibly strange in his London workshop. A thick, rubbery skin had formed on the absolute surface of a simple can of linseed oil that he foolishly left open overnight. But that rubbery film was significantly harder than standard varnish, and remarkably more flexible than fragile lacquer. Walton quickly realized that the oil was actively reacting with pure oxygen in the ambient air, completely naturally forming a powerful polymer shield. He meticulously spent the next 3 exhaustive years perfecting this exact process in a massive factory located just outside of London. By the year 1863, he had officially invented linoleum, representing the very first mass-produced floor covering in recorded human history. And it was built entirely on just one single, completely natural ingredient: pure linseed oil, painstakingly extracted from the microscopic seeds of the ancient flax plant. But the fascinating story of this incredible golden oil goes back much further than the smoggy streets of Victorian England. We must look 20,000 years further back into the shadows of antiquity. The flax plant is universally recognized as one of the absolutely oldest intentionally cultivated crops on the entire face of the earth. It was heavily grown in ancient Mesopotamia for both strong fiber and highly valuable seed. Astonishingly, Egyptian tombs still contain perfectly preserved linen cloth, meticulously woven entirely from raw flax, that is completely physically intact after more than 4,000 years in the darkness. And far across the globe in ancient China, brilliant early woodworkers ultimately discovered that physically crushing and pressing those tiny seeds consistently produced a rich golden oil. This miracle oil, visibly soaked deep into bare timber and aggressively hardened over passing weeks into an utterly impenetrable, rock-solid protective shield. It was not a volatile, carcinogenic chemical sealant pumped out of a sterilized laboratory. It was just pure, unadulterated oil pressed out of a humble seed by a human hand and rubbed firmly into real wood with a simple piece of cloth. For many long centuries spreading across the entirety of Europe, every single serious cabinet maker, shipbuilder, and furniture maker exclusively used linseed oil as the unshakable foundation of their entire craft. Medieval master builders cleverly mixed it with metallic lead oxide to purposefully create boiled linseed oil, which practically dried significantly harder and exponentially faster than the raw, untreated form. Gigantic cathedral doors built in Germany, completely treated with this exact specific oil way back in the 1500s, are somehow still standing tall and strong today. British naval military vessels thickly coated their massive wooden decks with raw linseed oil immediately before aggressively crossing the treacherous Atlantic Ocean. And that naturally treated wood miraculously survived the pounding corrosive salt water, the blistering relentless tropical sun, and even the devastating impact of enemy cannon fire. Their very survival out on the deadly open ocean completely depended on this incredible miracle oil. And then something catastrophic happened that changed absolutely everything in the home improvement world. In the early 1950s, the massive petrochemical industry aggressively introduced highly synthetic alkyd resins. Suddenly, cheap polyurethane, brittle lacquer, and harsh chemical varnishes completely flooded the global consumer market. And exponentially more profitable for massive corporations to manufacture in sterile laboratories. Pure linseed oil cost literal pennies per gallon to naturally produce, while these brand new synthetic chemical finishes cost top dollar and deliberately required endless reapplication every 2 to 3 short years. The greedy corporate industry absolutely did not switch because these flashy new synthetic products were actually better for your wood. They permanently switched because the new chemical products generated endless guaranteed repeat revenue from unsuspecting homeowners. And just like that, the ancient, flawless $2 formula quietly disappeared completely from local hardware store shelves. Now, we really must talk about the terrifying scale of what this calculated deception actually costs you today. Because the modern wood restoration industry currently generates nearly $2 billion per year in pure product sales alone. And the broader home restoration market here in the United States recently hit a staggering $210 billion in massive annual revenue. $210 billion. That is the true monstrous size of the corporate machine that continually profits directly from your engineered ignorance about 3 simple ingredients you can easily buy from your pocket change. Professional deck refinishing alone currently costs honest, hardworking homeowners an unbelievable average of $900 to $2,700 per single massive project. And the greedy industry aggressively recommends you completely refinish your wooden deck every 2 to 3 short years. Over just 20 years of standard home ownership, that is nearly $7,000 completely wasted on maintaining one single wooden platform sitting directly behind your house. The staggering amount of your hard-earned money constantly flowing from everyday homeowners directly into the fat pockets of professional contractors and giant chemical companies for basic, simple wood maintenance is absolutely sickening to deeply comprehend. And this entire massive billion-dollar empire completely depends on just one single, highly fragile illusion. They must keep you convinced that you cannot possibly do this project by yourself today. But stay right here, because the actual science behind this forgotten wood formula is about to permanently change how you see every single piece of timber in your entire house. Let us look closely at exactly what happens at the microscopic molecular level when you apply this golden liquid to severely damaged wood. Pure linseed oil is technically a triglyceride with an unusually high, naturally occurring concentration of alpha-linolenic acid. That specific component is a powerful polyunsaturated fatty acid that aggressively reacts with invisible oxygen in the ambient air through an organic process that strict laboratory scientists officially call oxidation. When you intentionally rub this ancient oil directly into exposed wood, it absolutely does not just sit lazily on the top surface like cheap paint or synthetic varnish. Instead, it immediately penetrates incredibly deep into the underlying cellular structure of the bare timber itself. Once safely inside those thirsty wood fibers, the complex fatty acid chains immediately begin to cross-link with each other, rapidly forming a highly flexible, impenetrable polymer network that completely fills every microscopic pore. This magnificent cross-linking process miraculously creates an entirely new composite material physically inside the wood fibers. It becomes a natural breathing resin that perfectly expands and contracts with shifting seasonal temperature, but fiercely repels rotting moisture and heavily resists daily scratching. This incredible biological transformation is the hidden key. The molecular structure of the wood is completely changed, becoming naturally waterproof from within. You're not just adding a weak, superficial layer. You are actually fortifying the microscopic cellular walls, making the timber practically invincible to the harsh outdoor elements year after year. An independent scientific study published in the prestigious Journal of Coatings Technology absolutely confirmed that natural linseed oil penetrates raw wood up to 4 times deeper than expensive synthetic polyurethane. Modern polyurethane merely sits blindly on top of the wood grain exactly like a suffocating, fragile plastic shell. And just one single microscopic crack in that brittle plastic shell forcefully lets creeping moisture rush underneath, permanently trapping the water against the wood. That exact structural failure is exactly why your expensive polyurethane decks inevitably peel, blister, and turn sickeningly gray within just 3 short seasons. The thin plastic shell inevitably breaks, the trapped water violently rots the wood from the inside, and the contractor eagerly comes back to collect another massive paycheck. Natural linseed oil does the exact opposite, because it fundamentally becomes a permanent physical part of the wood itself. It constantly breathes, it always flexes, and it actively protects. It is a brilliant molecular shield that massive chemical companies simply cannot artificially replicate in their sterile corporate laboratories, no matter how desperately they try today. Now add cheap white vinegar directly to the mixture, and something absolutely remarkable instantly happens. Pure vinegar is technically acetic acid, a brilliant natural solvent that effortlessly cuts through long decades of hardened grime, severe surface oxidation, and stubbornly dead chemical finish without ever damaging the incredibly healthy, vibrant wood fibers trapped just underneath. While the sharp vinegar aggressively strips away the ugly gray surface rot, the golden linseed oil instantly floods deeply into the freshly exposed grain and rapidly begins polymerizing completely immediately. The absolute third critical ingredient is the master key that brilliantly unlocks the entire forgotten formula. Pure turpentine, a powerful natural solvent distilled from sticky pine resin, radically thins the heavy linseed oil so it miraculously penetrates twice as deep and chemically cures twice as fast. Without turpentine, the raw oil stubbornly pools on the surface and frustratingly takes weeks to fully harden. With turpentine, it aggressively soaks in within minutes and powerfully begins hardening within just a few hours. The total staggering cost of these three simple ingredients at any local hardware store is less than $2 per standard application. A full quart of boiled linseed oil easily costs $4, a gallon of white vinegar costs under $3, and a small metal can of traditional turpentine barely runs $5 and lasts for months. So why is this life-changing formula not sold in every hardware store today? Because here's the terrifying mechanism that keeps this effective solution deliberately buried from public view. You cannot legally patent natural linseed oil because it is a biological product that has existed for thousands of years. You cannot exclusively patent white vinegar because it is naturally occurring acetic acid, one of the oldest chemicals known to human history. You cannot patent pure turpentine because it has been distilled since the ancient Greeks. There is no proprietary molecule whatsoever, and absolutely no corporate trade secret to protect. What cannot be patented simply cannot generate massive licensing fees. They are literally selling you this exact same ancient drying chemistry right now, loaded with toxic additives and a shiny corporate logo at a sickening 400% markup. I must be completely honest with you about something incredibly important right now, because this formula is not simple magic, and there are limitations you absolutely must understand today. Raw linseed oil can frustratingly take long weeks to fully cure, which is exactly why this recipe strictly calls for boiled linseed oil that accelerates hardening to 24 hours. But here is the one critical safety warning that most DIY channels dangerously ignore every single day. Cotton rags heavily soaked with pure linseed oil can and will spontaneously combust if carelessly left crumpled in a pile. In 1991, a massive fire directly caused by neglected linseed oil-soaked rags completely destroyed One Meridian Plaza in Philadelphia and tragically killed 3 brave firefighters. You must always spread your used rags perfectly flat to dry outdoors, or entirely submerge them deep in water inside a safely sealed metal container before safely disposing. Because this strict protocol is absolutely not optional today, this is a mandatory life safety rule. Now, here is exactly how to flawlessly make and properly apply this liquid today. Step 1. Gather your 3 cheap ingredients from any local hardware store. You need exactly 1 equal part boiled linseed oil, 1 equal part white distilled vinegar, and 1 equal part turpentine. Step 2. Combine all 3 liquids directly into a glass jar with a tight lid and forcefully shake for 30 seconds until the mixture beautifully emulsifies into a cloudy golden liquid. Step 3. Clean the bare wood surface with a dry brush to quickly remove loose dirt and cobwebs, because you do not need to chemically strip or power wash anything beforehand. Step 4. Carefully dip a completely clean cotton rag into the mixture and smoothly apply it along the natural grain of the wood using firm, wonderfully even strokes. Step 5. Let the penetrating coat deeply absorb for 10 to 15 minutes, then completely wipe away any excess liquid with a totally dry cloth. Step 6. Wait 24 hours and faithfully apply a second powerful coat using the exact same proven method to permanently double the protective barrier, safely inside the wood fibers forever. For 20,000 years, humans protected wood with natural oil from a tiny seed and simple acid from fermented grain. There was absolutely no massive corporation, no shiny brand name, and no expensive equipment required. It was just brilliant chemistry that Mother Nature perfectly designed long before any corporate patent office ever opened its greedy doors. A professional contractor would easily charge you $600 for a single deck, turning a simple afternoon project into a devastating $1,400 invoice. You just learned how to do it yourself for less than $2 in raw materials and 20 short minutes of your time. The expensive wood restoration industry literally prays every single day that you never learn what you just learned in this video. The supposedly dead wood did not actually die. It was simply waiting patiently for someone to finally remember what the greedy modern industry desperately made us all forget. If this forbidden knowledge made a difference for you today, subscribe and share this video immediately to preserve what they tried to totally erase.